welcome. I grew up. You don't have to move, but I just need to comment on it. I grew up and I thought that it was my church that didn't fill the front row. But as you get older, you go to other institutions and churches, and it is a human thing. So, but welcome. Let me pray, and we'll get started tonight. Heavenly Father, you are all wise, you are gracious, you are love, you are three in one. We praise you, we give you credit, we give you all the glory. And Father, thank you for our school, thank you for those gathered tonight, thank you for Heather, who has traveled so long to be with us this evening. Please bless this gathering as we come together to discuss Paideia together. In Christ's name, amen. Amen. Thank you for being here. I'm not going to talk very long, but I do want to mention, aside from welcoming and praying, that our enrollment officially begins tonight. So current families should be receiving, if you haven't already, should have gotten, if you haven't gotten the email, then something went wrong. But you should have gotten an email giving details about what that enrollment process looks like. And it's a fairly detailed email, so I'm not going to rehash it right now. But ClassReach is the system that we're going to go through to re-enroll new families who are not currently part of our school community. Will go through a different system that helps us interview, get a pastoral reference. But ClassReach, that's the name, that's the new name. That we're going re-enrollment through ClassReach. So that you should get an email with details about that. We're excited about that, and also very humbled to have Ms. Heather Lloyd with us tonight. Jared has known her longer than I have, and I've asked him to introduce her tonight as she joins us. So.
Well, Heather Lloyd is the executive director of Concordis Education Partners, and she is a recent employee of Turning Point Education. I first met her when she was the right-hand woman to Dr. Ben Merkel at New St. Andrews College, and first really got to know her in 2017 when we were all in a fantastic Airbnb experience. There, she can fill you in all the fun details with the Merkels, the Schlecks, the Heather, Dr. Erb, and Griffith, and one bathroom. And it was, you've never seen a bathroom work so hard for so many people. But Heather she starts the day before I was amazed even then. And Heather is a mover and a shaker, and she's a happy warrior, and she's done a lot of work and is doing a lot of work in the ACCS. She's in Boise, Idaho now, and she's a mom and a grandma, and she is eager beaver and very well educated. She's teachable, she's humble, and she has been on our campus today being very cheerfully stepping in the classroom and encouraging us, and I know she's going to be an encouragement to you. So if you would welcome Heather Lloyd.
Thank you. Very kind introduction. So it just means I'm a jack of all trades. I'm old and master of nothing. That's all it is. But I do get the privilege of going around and talking to parents all the time about different stages of where we are in classical Christian education. Sometimes it's a startup school. We start a lot of schools. And sometimes it's 20, 30 years down the road like you guys, where it's been a beautiful school going on for a long time, and there's time for just some rebranding, redoing a little bit. Every school kind of goes through that, and so I get the privilege of working with a lot of 50-year-old schools, 40-year-old schools as well. I'm going to tell you a little brief just history of Concordis and how it got started. And I was a head of school and was a little overwhelmed with all I had to do. Anybody that's been a head of school can understand that. And I felt like it was not something I could keep doing easily. So I always joke that I started a company to do all the things I didn't like as a head of school. And that was bookkeeping, back-end stuff, software development, kind of all that side of it. So Concordis, we were started to actually help small community schools actually be cost affordable. That was kind of one of the big things, to make them efficient. And so that's kind of where we stepped in. But I get to do a more favorite thing. So we've got a whole team. There's 35 of us. But I get to do this part of it, which is my favorite thing. And that is to talk about classical Christian education. So I want to go through a little bit of the history of education for you for a moment. For some of you, this is old news, but for some of you, you might be like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that was the way. I had the privilege of working with David Goodwin at ACCS, and he and I brainstorm on a ton of things regarding what education is. And has anybody had the opportunity to read Battle for the American Mind? That's the right one. Yeah, it's an interesting book, and he's got another edition coming out. It's a second book that's going to go into actually the details of classical. And there was about 7 of us that threw out ideas and anything. Anyway, one of the things that's interesting about classical Christian education, if you don't know, is that Dorothy Sayers wrote an article, and in that article she made a comment about ages and stages of development. She made one little paragraph. And thankfully, Doug Wilson took it, ran with it, started Logos School in Moscow, Idaho, and classical Christian education was really birthed in the U.S. It's a wonderful thing. As people started diving in more and more to classical Christian education, we started studying a little bit more of like, what actually is this? What is it beyond just like grammar, logic, and rhetoric stages of development? And we moved into wave 2 of classical Christian education, which got into the great books. It was kind of a refocusing on what we're studying is really what matters. Most will say that we are now in wave 3 of classical Christian education, which is going back to a medieval liberal arts. And that's really what I want to talk about with you. If you go back to like the Greco-Roman era and you go back to just kind of that humanist era, it's really when humanism started to take root. And as you look through history, every time you see ism, it's something trying to replace God. Every time, from everything from even patriotism can try to replace God sometimes, right? Nationalism can try to replace God. But more importantly, going back to humanism, who's trying to be replaced? We're trying to replace God with us, that we can elevate ourselves to God. It's kind of almost like the Tower of Babel. It's a ziggurat. Let me see if I can elevate myself up to heaven. And that's a big part of what the Greco-Roman era was about in the education. So why are we doing classical that looks and reflects back on that? Well, the answer is really in the medieval liberal arts. So what happened is they were taking the 7 liberal arts, but they were really understanding Ephesians 6:4 and the Greek word paideia. Fathers, do not exasperate your children, but train them up in the discipline and nurture of the Lord. That's the word paideia, the Greek word paideia. And paideia, how many of you have seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding? Anybody? That's the ultimate understanding of Greek paideia. And Paul writes to the church of Ephesus, and he's really basically saying, church of Ephesus, not the paideia that you're used to, like Portocalis family, where it's everything Greek, but the paideia of the Lord, everything Christ. And so the medieval church understood that, but then they also looked at the 7 liberal arts and said, whoo, those are a pretty good way to educate. I'm paraphrasing very much. I don't think they spoke like that. But the idea was that the trivium is actually the skill of words. It's the 3 ways of learning words. Grammar, which is the knowledge or the what to think part. The logic, which is the understanding or the deeper meanings and the deeper understanding. And then rhetoric was actually wisdom. So it was going from knowledge to understanding to wisdom. That was the skill of words. And then the skill of numbers was the quadrivium. Arithmetic, numbers themselves, to geometry, numbers in space, to finally music, numbers in time, and then to God's cosmos. And I use the word cosmos because the actual word is astronomy, but we have a very shallow understanding of astronomy. The word astronomy, we tend to go stars, look up, right? But God's ordered cosmos is what actually the whole purpose of the quadrivium is. In fact, theology and philosophy came out of the quadrivium, not the trivium, which is kind of interesting because the idea of I can understand God's cosmos, I can start to understand more of who God is. And so the trivium, the art skill of words, the quadrivium, the skill of numbers, and then, of course, paideia, steeping all things in Christ, is the idea of classical Christian education. And this 3rd wave that we're in is actually going back to really what the medieval church defined it as. And it looks a little different. Not a lot different, but it looks a little different, a little nuances. We tend to, when we went with Dorothy Sayers' age-stage development, grammar, logic, and rhetoric stages, what we were kind of going back to is a lot of information. We kind of resorted the grammar to information. And memory work is impeccable and needed. It's a beautiful, but it's a knowledge base to then build more on. And so there's a lot more deeper understanding. One of the definitions that I love about classical is it's much, not more education. That's a hard understanding, the word much, not more. What do we mean by that? It's deeper. It's mile deep, inch wide, not mile wide, inch deep. In fact, what's interesting when you treat classical Christian education like that, where you're trying to take the kids from knowledge to understanding to wisdom, you actually meet them more where they're at, because not everybody's having to do the same exact thing. I'm actually coaching them towards that standard of wisdom. So one of the things I like to say is, in America right now, sports is going fabulously well and education's horrible. What's the difference? What are we doing different? Well, in sports, we're coaching the players. Everybody's on the field. We're coaching everybody to win the game. We're coaching everybody. And here's another thing. When we win the game, we do not say, you've arrived, you're done, that's it, no more practice. No, it's like, great, we made it that far. Now we're going to go even further. We're going to take it a little bit further. And the idea is coaching. Good classical Christian teaching is coaching students. It's moving them from knowledge to understanding to wisdom. It's always saying the target is out there. How do we help that child get that target? Which allows us to individualize in the classroom a little bit more for the students. Doesn't mean we're making accommodations. It just means we can challenge the really strong student and we can support the weaker student. That's the beauty of it. Just like a good coach on the football field, we're able to do that. That's a little harder to do when we reduce grammar, logic, and rhetoric to stages of development. What if you get a child who struggles with memory? Does anybody in here have an adopted child? Two. Adopted children, if they've had any severe trauma, have memory issues. They're really hard to overcome oftentimes. They really struggle in classical Christian schools. In fact, one of the reasons I started really looking into classical Christian education is that really what is it is our fifth child is adopted. He was 4 when we adopted him, and he was just not surviving at Logos. Memorize anything. Nothing would stick with him. We tried every kind of memory device you could imagine, and we were writing it, doing it, putting headphones in his ear to say it wouldn't stick with him no matter what, and he couldn't pass his classes because of it. So I ended up starting a different school for him, and he was able to thrive in it because he was able to actually get to the point where he was doing the understanding and the wisdom. Couldn't memorize. He never has been able to memorize, but he could do the understanding and the wisdom. We were able to meet him where he was at. What if you have a child that really only can memorize? They can't get to the deeper understanding. Well, in every class that they're in, you're always building that knowledge base. And then hopefully, Lord willing, that starts to spark something. But the most important thing with this wisdom aspect is that I love Spurgeon's definition of discernment, is knowing the right from the almost right. And we're in a disaster today on Christians' watch because we've let the slippery slope of almost right get us to where we are. And if we're not in classical Christian education constantly not honing the skill of discernment, then we're doing something wrong. And that discernment aspect is constantly putting before the kids right and almost right. That's that much, not more education. We're really getting them to where they're at, which means the classroom looks just a smidge different. The engagement is with the students. One of the things I always argue is that good classical Christian education is not tennis, teacher to student, teacher to student. It's racquetball. The teacher is the wall and the players are in the classroom, and you're constantly deflecting that ball back to the different players in the room. The heavy burden of learning is on the student. Another misunderstanding that happens in classical Christian education is the word rigor. Some people go, love rigor, and other people are going, rigor's killing my child, right? And there's never an in-between. There's somebody like, I could take it or leave it. It's one or the other. It's either hate it or love it. And part of that is we've gotten a misunderstanding of rigor. We think that rigor is something we put on the students, but it's actually something we cultivate in them. They're the ones that we want to be rigorous. They're the ones that we want bringing that rigor forward, and that's individual. Part of that is because we are in Paideia education. We're discipling these children, and we want them to be discerning, and we want them to be resilient. Resilience is, we look at the average 20-year-olds today, their resilience level is nothing. I mean, it's dangerously low. It's scary low. And part of that is we haven't cultivated that well, even in classical Christian education, and we tend to put rigor on the students so much that they either cave under it or they rise to it, and we're not actually cultivating that work ethic in them. So that much not more, that wisdom seeking, we're really trying to get the students to produce the rigor, which means the burden of learning is on them. Now, that doesn't mean we just turn everything over to the student and they're going to figure it out. Not at all. It's coached, like a football coach. How do I go in and really help bring you up to the standard? How do I get you aimed at this? How do I get you wiser? So let me give you a little example from Romans 13, since it's a passage we all know. What is Romans 13 about? Just at least the beginning part. What's that? Anybody? What's that? No, that's 1 Corinthians 13. Yeah. Romans 13 is about government and the right to bear, the government has the right to bear the sword. Right? There's a whole lot in that chapter that we could study. So let me lay that out for you in a grammar, logic, and rhetoric understanding. So the grammar of Romans 13 would be reading it, right? We need to understand it. We need to understand some of the terminology. We need to know who it was written to, the Romans, who it was written by, Paul, what was going on in the context of the government at the time, because that's going to give us more context to Romans 13. I need to understand it deeply. So we're going to lay out all of Romans 13 in that way. And then we're probably going to go back and need to study maybe some Aquinas law. What's divine law? What's civil law? What's the difference? We'll go back to other scriptures and lay that out. We're going to wrestle through those ideas. And then the rhetoric question, the final question that we might ask the students to answer is something along this line. Is breaking the speed limit sin? Now, if you know about that, if you know about that question, you actually know that it could be answered probably either way and be right depending on how you answer it. Right? You could probably argue effectively that if I'm going 26 miles an hour in a neighborhood, I'm not sinning. But somebody else might be able to argue effectively that yes, you are. It's a discernment moment. But you've laid the grammar, the understanding, then you get to the the grammar, the knowledge, then you get to the wrestling and understanding so that they are equipped in how to answer that discernment question. And that's where the wrestling begins. For the little ones, it's the same kind of idea, but it's an easier subject. We're not talking about law and Aquinas, and we're not doing that, right? We're taking it down to their level, studying the butterfly. Maybe at the end, is a moth a butterfly? There's a discernment level to that, where you're looking at the parts of what you know about the butterfly and looking at what you know about a moth and going, are they the same? And that really is honing the skill of discernment. So how is that more paideia than anything else? I think that's an important question, because I would argue that if we're not training in discernment and constantly putting these questions before the kids, that they have to wrestle with an answer, that we're not equipping them for what they are going to be facing. And part of paideia is, and my stupid human analogy is that paideia is like a crock pot. We're cooking the kids in this crock pot with all the seasoning of Christ. And over the years, the 18 years or whatever we have them at home, they're cooking in that so that when we pull them out, any way you cut them, it's Christ. That's the idea of paideia. We're steeping them in the crock pot of all things Christ. And so when we bring that out, we want them to have wrestled through things. We want them to have faced hard things. Another thing that's part of resilience building is good failure. This is also another thing of cultivating the rigor. Like I mentioned in sports, the coach does not, when they win a game, the coach does not say, they won the game, no more practice needed. Oftentimes we do that in education, get 100%. So I've given 500 or 600% probably in my life as a teacher. I've taught 30 years. Because it means perfect, no flaw. And you know what's interesting is I actually got kids to pretty much want to do it really well. They weren't hurt by not getting 100%. They worked really hard to try to get that 100%. Really hard. And that one of the things that helps is with good failure. Not everybody gets an A just because they tried hard. We want them, just like on the field, we would do that with a coach very differently, right? The coach is going to keep trying to get them to do their best. That's what we're doing in classical Christian education. We're cultivating that rigor in them. We want them resilient, discerning Christians. The other thing that's something that is really beautiful is integrated humanities. We've often, over the years, taught classical education thinking the kids will just synthesize all the ideas, and rhetoric really is, and wisdom is really the synthesis of ideas. So if I teach a separate literature class, and then a history class, and then a Bible class, and then a grammar class, and all this, it doesn't end up coalescing quite like we would want it to. The kids don't put it all together. So the idea is that we're actually putting a subject on the table and letting the fields of study come out. Take Charlotte's Web, for example. Most of you have read that. How many have read that? Everybody, hopefully. So in chapter 1 of Charlotte's Web alone, let's say the kids have read that, we have a couple of things that we can actually focus on and actually learn quite a bit. We have Ma and Pa. Well, that's not how we talk today very often, so we know we're in a different historical context. Let's talk through that. What was it like? What's different? We also are learning about a runt. We're learning what a runt is. We're also learning theologically the difference between animal life and human life. Those image bearers of the living God and animals when a fern begs Pa to not kill Wilbur, right? And she says, if I had been born small, Pa, would you have killed me? He's like, that's different, Fern. Well, we get to talk about that. What's different? She's made in the image of God. Wilbur's not, although he talks, so there's a difference there, right? We also get to see beautiful literature. The author says something like, the home smelled like wet plaster and warm coffee. We can all be there in the moment. We get what that is. We understand the beauty of that and like what that house must have felt like and been like. So we're learning literary elements at the same time. And so we're getting that deep history while we're getting historical context. And there's nothing wrong with learning timelines and all that. It's a beautiful thing. They're beautiful anchor points. But historical context is probably one of the key things to really understanding the past. It's so easy to go back and be really upset with the Christians living in Nazi Germany who didn't defend the Holocaust victims, and rightly so. And yet, I have no doubt that 200 years from now, we're going to look back at us and the Christians in 200 years are going to say, can you believe while abortion clinics were killing babies down the road, the Christians just sat there? Because we don't understand historical context. Getting into story gives us the idea of historical context. And that's going to be the way the curriculum works next year is what's the subject on the table? How do those fields of study come out? And what are those beautiful questions that we're going to ask? We're also going to dive a little deeper into writing with exercises called progymnosmata. Right, it's a big mouthful. We get our word gymnastics from it. They're Greek writing exercises, but I don't want you for a second to think, oh, we're going back to ancient secular humanist education. We're not. But the progymnosmatas are incredibly beautiful for thinking skills. For example, one is called a paraphrastic, and it's the idea of reducing something down to its quintessential element. So it might be you get done reading Romans 13 and you ask the kids to write in one sentence, please distill all of Romans 13 down to one sentence. That takes incredible skill. That's a thinking skill that's unbelievable. What does it teach? It starts teaching thesis. I can reduce this idea down to one particular thing. Another one is ekphrasis. I'm going to show you some examples of this at the end here. Ekphrasis is one of my favorite. It's actually where you are writing a description of a painting or of an art piece. And it is one of my favorite ones because you actually learn to see exactly what the artist was intending, and you get to draw that emotion out of the audience in words that the artist intended in a painting. And it starts to teach a couple different skills. First of all, I need to see the author's perspective. I need to try to get what pathos he wanted to draw from the audience. There's a beauty to that. There's another one called narratio, and that's backstory. And it's one of my favorites. It's actually a really incredible argument way of going. And we might, with the little one, start with something like that. Like, I just walked outside, and Mr. and Mrs. Ritchie's van has a tree laying across. It's crushed to smithereens. And then I go, I saw Will with an axe earlier. That's narratio. I just gave an argument without giving an argument. The kids are learning that. Well, what does that start to teach? That we can be manipulated very easily. So we start to learn where that manipulation is and recognize it, and then practice truthful narratio. What leads to it? So instead, actually, the narratio is that it was the wind was 80 miles an hour. That's a different backstory. But they're learning how to argue and lead towards that. There's another one called encomium, and that's where you praise a deed or an action. And this one's beautiful when you're reading a story and you're trying to actually praise whether it was a good deed, was it a biblical deed, was it a righteous deed? And you might try to praise that, and the students have to sit there and wrestle through, how do I praise this deed? Or vituperation, to curse a deed or curse a saying. And then you're getting into thesis, where you're laying all this out to be able to defend something, but you're asking good questions first. We often do thesis in a really weird way, and it's across the classical Christian world, and everybody's starting to finally rethink it a little bit. The thing we always did is we had seniors turn in a proposition and then defend it. But really what we want is truth-seeking Christians. So the first thing we should do is pick a topic and ask a lot of questions about it. What is true? How is this done? What happened? And so you start to wrestle through those questions and then discover the truth, wrestling through, and then you have your thesis, and you've actually wrestled through the differing opinions. And thesis is a progymnosmata exercise. So everything is building towards this, and you start even in kindergarten, but they're doing them orally. A brief version of a progymnosmata exercise is to say, after studying the butterfly and finding out the beauty of the life cycle and the cocoon and all that, and looking at a child and saying, what's the best adjective that describes a butterfly? And one little child raises their hand and says, pretty. You're like, that's a good word, it is pretty. Is that the best word? The next child says, beautiful. You're like, ooh, that might be a little bit more like a butterfly. Beautiful, that's good. And then another child raises their hand and says, miraculous. You're like, ooh, there's a deeper understanding. The life cycle of a butterfly is quite miraculous. That child had a deeper understanding. And then the other students are like, oh, fitting words matter. It matters which words I choose. And again, we're Christians. We're supposed to be people of the Word. We should be people of good words. We should be people that understand words. And so we're honing that craft of the skill of words through all of that. In math, we're doing it differently because 2 + 2 equaling 4 is that way because God is. He's the state of being. Therefore, all of this is true. Math is true. And numbers just represent what is. And we're helping kids recognize that. So this is Paideia formation in the skill of numbers. And it goes on in that matter. One of the beauties of this is it's not, and one of the things I think you got, it was wonderful to be around the school today. You've got some incredible teachers and incredible culture. This is just going, I always say it's turning the volume up on classical a little bit. Just turning the volume up to where the students are doing the rigor of learning. And not just the rigor of busy work. They're doing the rigor of learning. A lot of learning coming out of them. And that's one of the beauties of it. I want to pause there and just ask if there's any questions. And I want to do some other things with you guys, but any questions at all? No? Well, that's too easy. So let me show you, I'm going to show you a little bit of something kind of that would look just a little different. I'm going to show you, I don't know, let me see if you can see this well. This is I'm going to give you an example of a progymnosmata. This is a painting, famous painting. How many of you know this painting? Anybody know it? Yeah, a few of you like it, yeah. So a lot of people don't. So one thing that's a little bit different with this approach to classical Christian education is we might actually start with an unknown. Let's say a 7th grader had no idea what this image was. And I might have them write an ekphrasis describing it. I just got to do this last week with a group of about 30 teachers. It was very fun. And a lot of them they were new to classical, so they had no idea what this picture was. So they were writing notes on it. And I mean, they were saying things like stoic faces and a dowdry clothing, dark clothing. He looks solemn. And they were kind of going through all that. Well, in the end, who knows the history of this painting? What is it actually? Does anybody know what it is? Do you know what it is? It is, and it's not even, they actually believe it was a marriage contract because they used to document marriage contracts through writing, but really wealthy Italian merchants, which he is, could actually sometimes commission an artist to actually do the painting. So this, they believe, was a marriage, kind of a marriage covenant, if you will. Now, it begs a lot of questions because she's pregnant, right? So we have to ask a lot of questions. And then the kids can wrestle through it. Well, what do you think? Was this era of time, would they have, if she had gotten pregnant out of wedlock, would they have marketed it in such a way? Let's study that. What would it have been like? What other reason could it have been? And I've had kids and teachers come up with, well, maybe it took that long to paint it. It could have. It could have. Maybe that's what it was, right? But we're wrestling through it, and in that idea, they're not going to ever look at pictures the same. They're not going to know there's backstory, there's narratio, there's history. And in studying this, we might even go through some of the maps and understand that this is where the modern day Netherlands are. We might learn what the countries were at that time in the 1400s, and then we'd go through and look at what it looks like now. We might study the different trades that were going on. He was an Italian merchant who was very wealthy. In fact, if you go back to the painting, what you cannot see very well is there's oranges strewn about. Not a very big deal unless you understand that in that era of time, in that region, to have oranges was extreme wealth. And they have them purposely looking strewn about on the dresser. They have an Asian Persian-looking rug underneath them. She doesn't have her shoes on. This was a period of time where, for the first time, the church was starting to look at homes as being actually a sanctuary in some kind. So she has her shoes off. There's more opulence to the fixtures. Green meant wealth. There's a dog down here that you probably can't see very well. And indoor pets also represented wealth. Fur-trimmed clothing represented wealth. The heavy bedding linens represented wealth. This painting was meant to show their wealth. So another argument might be that he wanted his wife to look fruitful. So did they wait till she was pregnant? We don't know. But that's actually, you get to study that. You could study a whole era of time just studying this painting. Understanding what marriage was like. This is when marriage was not being done in the church. It was being done by just the word of witnesses. In fact, in the mirror here, the gentleman that painted this, his reflection is there. And the painting is actually signed, Jean Van Eyck was here. Very weird way for an artist to sign. But that's what classical Christian education is looking at. It's putting a subject on the table and studying that. And we're going to do a lot of that with literature. One of my favorite pieces, and I have it hanging in my office, is this one. If you don't know, people walk in my office and go, why do you have that in your office? What is that? This is called The First Morning, Mourning. And this is about this is about Adam and Eve and Abel. They found Abel's body. And it's a theological treatise. It's really meant to be a deep understanding of the fall. And an ekphrasis of this, I had a student write this, and I want to read it to you because I think it's so beautiful, and I think it gets to, this is a different level of writing than what we normally see today. So this is an ekphrasis of the first morning. For dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. Those fearful words now reverberate like thunder in the groaning hearts of our first parents. Yet earth is silent, a breath caught before a bitter sob. Their lonely forms bowed under the gloom that inhabits the once bright sky, darker still the gnawing pain of loss. Death's unnatural sting stabs at their souls as their son's limp body lies sprawled across his father's lap. Blood that once carried life and vitality now spills upon the ground, staining the earth and sealing the curse. His mother seeks respite in the shadow of his father's wing, but he has no peace to give. Their hearts are empty, aching, void. And the way we used that piece is we actually had the students write about it before we studied deeply in Genesis, the fall. And I had them write and set that aside for a few weeks while we really wrestled through the fall, what happened in Genesis. And then at the end, their assessment was to actually rewrite their ekphrasis on this, and you wouldn't have believed the depth difference. They went from knowledge to understanding to wisdom. There was a wisdom in understanding the fall with this. And that's what classical Christian education does. It takes us to that wisdom aspect, and that's what we get to do with the kids. And that's what I mean by it's turning the volume up a little bit more on classical and thinking about it a little bit differently. And so the curriculum we're going to use, one of the most important things is that teachers have to digest this and bring it out to to the students. They really are the living curriculum. They're just using a guide of what they're aiming at, what their telos is. Telos is the final aim. They're making sure that the students are progressing towards that. And one of the key things we're doing is backwards planning from 12th grade. So we're looking back and going, if I want a 12th grader to be able to write like that, what skills do I need to bring in to make sure that they're equipped for that? If I want them to debate well in 12th grade, what skills do I need to backwards plan to get them there? On top of it, for each lesson, you're backwards planning. As a teacher, you're backwards planning. You're going, if I want them to be able to answer, is breaking the speed limit sin, then I need to actually build a backwards plan. What do they need to be equipped in? What's the foundation? What do they need to know to be able to wrestle through and answer that question? And so it's discernment training. It's even done with math. It's done with science. If I need them to know this, how do I backwards plan to get them there? And if I need them to know this in 12th grade, how do I backwards plan down to kindergarten to get them there? Now, I think some of you have heard that we're doing cohorts, and there's probably a lot of questions around cohorts. And to be honest, it's not that much different than the way education was done a couple hundred years ago. So we changed things quite a bit after the Prussian system. Horace Mann brought it over here, which was age grade segregation, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. That was brought to America. Cohorts is just going back to how most homeschool families know how kids learn in that sense. Like I can easily put these kids together and they learn at different paces. And there's not giant differences. It's not like it's going to feel totally different. There's going to be a 12-year-old and with 5-year-olds. That's not the case. Once in a while, that might be a case with a child with Down syndrome. I have had a 12-year-old child with Down syndrome, a little girl who she was reading at about a 4 or 5-year-old level. She was able to do some letters, and she was in kindergarten and happy as a lark in that first level. Those are anomalies. Generally speaking, there is a reason kids learn in their path, but in their pattern. But what we're able to do is we're able to not ever have like holding a child back or moving a child up. They're just put in the reading cohort. What reading level do they read at? Let's put them there. They're wrestling through the literature. They're being asked questions. And because we're going to rotate through ancient, medieval, modern, and postmodern on a cycle, the kids are never on peat and repeat. So if you end up with, quote, a second grader needing to repeat that cohort level, they're doing modern that year, or they're doing the next year. And so they're able to keep learning different material, but while building the same skill. So it sounds really complicated. It's actually just really finding where the children are. People are like, what if it takes my child 17 years to get through school? It's still going to follow a similar pattern, unless there's a child that's a true struggling learner. That might be different, and we would talk to the parents about that. But we also don't want children under-challenged. An under-challenged student doesn't do well either. So we're able to move a child up. And again, a lot of parents will say, so does that mean, what if my 8-year-old's a really good reader? Are they in with high schoolers? No, we're not going to go that, we're going to stay within limits. And we're always going to ask the parents, what I like about this is it's real parent partnership. Like, hey, little Johnny's on the fence between these two cohorts. This one would challenge him a lot more. This one, I'm worried might under-challenge him. What do you think? And I've had a parent say to me before, actually, he does really bad when he's over-challenged. Great, let's keep him here. And if halfway through the year we find we were wrong, we'll move him up. Doesn't hurt anything. We're really able to individualize education within the school, within the structure of a school, which I absolutely love. So with all that, your teachers are going to be the ones that are determining where they're placed. They know you, they know your students. They're going to know where the kids need to go. They're going to be able to meet with the parents and talk about it. So it's really customizing the education a little bit, which is really wonderful. The only people this is harder on is the teachers, if they're not used to digesting the material and really becoming that curriculum, really living that out in the classroom. Then it can be a little harder on the teachers. But as long as they're able to just really digest, read through the literature, know what is in it, and then be able to bring it to the students and cultivate that wonder and cultivate that rigor, it's great. I love teaching that way. Telos teaching is what I call it. You're aimed here, backwards planning. Let me pause there. Any questions? Yeah.
Do you ever find that there's issues with siblings being in the same school?
It's a good question. Yes, sometimes that happens, and we're always going to meet with parents on that to say, what do we need to do? Are they good together? Sometimes it's beautiful, sometimes it's not. That's going to be a conversation. I don't know the particular circumstances to say, but yeah, it's a conversation. What I like about it is there's a lot more prayer that goes into where to place the kids. You're actually sitting there going, what's better for this child? What's the best place for them? And with siblings, sometimes it goes great. Sometimes it's better to keep them apart, and we know that. Because you're still able to help within your cohort. You're still able to challenge. Because remember that whole thing of, like, you're really individualizing for the students. You're still able to challenge a student that might be, they could have moved up, but they would be with their sister or something like that. We're going to wrestle through that. And the teachers will wrestle through that with the parents on that.
I had a question. It sounds like this works really well for certain subjects. It say something like math.
Oh, good question. Yeah,
Because
math's still very.
You say if you're going to be moving somebody up
Yeah.
partway through the year.
They can stay in their same math. So one of the beauties of this is math is going to be at the same time, science is going to be at the same time, and humanities is going to be at the same time. So you could have a child in this upper level reading, but they're struggling with math, and they can be in the lower math and science. But math is very skill-based, so it is going to progress very specifically.
So math wouldn't be like partway through the year.
That one would be a hard one. Yes.
And then I need to move up.
Yes.
Then you've missed.
No. Yes,
others.
the only thing, normally with math, what happens is 2 weeks in, a school goes, oh, we didn't put them up high enough. Maybe they tested really poor coming into the school. I've had that happen where a student gets nervous, tests really poor on a first test. We put them in a level, and 2 weeks later we go, oh, this is not the right level. We need to move them up. Math does not happen as much. You're right. It has to have that incremental skill. More humanities, it'll happen sometimes. Like where the light bulb just clicks on and reading all of a sudden becomes easy for them. We want to challenge them.
So my 4th grade class, they love Bible. So in the humanities, will they, in the literature, will they be able to?
Oh,
to do
yes.
that?
That's an important part. In fact, that's that knowledge foundation for everything they're reading. So as the teacher chooses a telos for the book, let's say it's Charlotte's Web, and I want them to, I want them to ultimately know the difference between the image bearers of God and animals. That's not a great one for that book, but let's just say, well, then all my scripture is going to be in the Bible at the beginning of each class is going to be geared on prepping them for that.
So it's incorporated in the curriculum.
Incorporated.
Kind of guide you.
Correct.
So because
Yes.
I don't have a lot of confidence that I would always pick the most.
Yes. Yeah, it's got a foundation for the different ages, and then it also has what are called trivium sheets that are connected to it. And the trivium sheets, and the gentleman who wrote the curriculum that we provide, and we provide it for anybody that wants it, is Bill Stutzman, who wrote Ambrose curriculum. If anybody knows Ambrose School, so he wrote their gold sheets, and he's just brilliant. And so he wrote what are called triv sheets, and in that he's got biblical questions, backup scripture to study. It's like a 4-page document of almost like a prelude to every book that gives the teacher kind of all the resources that they need for them to digest. It's not a scripted lesson plan of now say this. It's because that's that telos planning.
That you're doing the digesting.
Correct.
And
Able to.
I've got that part of it.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
was wondering how that fit in. And
Yes.
so-
It's
with
imperative.
the literature.
Correct. With the literature and history. Yep. Yeah.
So this is going to sound like I don't have confidence in the teachers and the job that they do, because that's the exact opposite
Yeah.
I do. But I've worked with all these teachers. We've gone through changes and stuff like that. And what I get concerned is just like, is this curriculum enough guidance where the teacher is starting over, and then all of a sudden I'm hearing this teacher, gosh, I'm spending 6 hours a night trying to figure this out.
Right.
And then the kid's coming home, I don't know what's going on, the teacher doesn't know what's going on, and we're trying to help
Yeah.
one another through that.
Yeah.
And that's my concern. I don't want to see my teachers being like, in theory, it sounded great, and then when you try to do it in the classroom, everybody falls apart.
Right.
And then and I understand we all got to struggle
Right.
through together and
Right.
figure it out, but are there going to be enough resources where we can be like,
Yeah.
where we're helping one another, not
Right.
just like, oh, I'm just throwing up my hands, I don't know what to
Right. No, yes.
do.
So it is harder at first, but then it gets easier because you're not having to plan so much material. So
Is
it's
there training
yes,
available
tons of
for
training.
them?
Tons of training, and the other difference is it's unit planning. So you have a unit, a book unit, and you're planning for 3 weeks at a time with a telos. So we train in how to backwards plan. So we have 7 consultants that do training. That can be you can even meet with them one-on-one if you want. We're also going to be working a lot with Will and how to kind of do not only to walk into the classroom, make sure it's going well. That's one of the big things we're going to be doing. Teacher support is a huge part of this. And it's training in classical Christian pedagogy is really what it ends up being. So that's the delightful thing. So we have in-person videos, we do one-on-one coaching, anything that helps. We're going to be working with Will a ton on things and what to look for in lesson plans. And once teachers get it, and usually year 2 is when they go, oh, like year 1's a little bit of a struggle, and then year 2, like, I made it so hard last year. All I need, and the idea is that you're actually lesson planning less because you're doing 3 weeks at a time. You're unit planning for 3 weeks, backwards planning. You have everything laid out, and then you go on. So it's like one hard day of lesson planning instead of every week hard lesson planning.
So we're not asking all the teachers to give up their entire summer vacation.
No,
So they have to
no, not at all.
figure out how to
No.
do this.
No, and I got to see all the teachers, and you've got some excellent teachers here, so I think it's not going to be,
I'm not trying to say
no.
I don't
It's-
have confidence in them. I
it's
just don't
usually-
want to ask.
It's usually the hardest on teachers who have never taught before. Like if they come in out of college, those are the ones, because they haven't even had any lesson planning, and those are the ones that it's usually a struggle for when we've done that. We have 60 schools that use our materials, and so it's sometimes difficult. And over time, you're gonna be looking. One thing that's different is it's not a book you hand. It's actually a spreadsheet with all the information that's needed and the triv sheets, and we actually duplicate it. Will have a copy that is Geneva's copy. You can change a book in it, you can manipulate it, you can move things. It's meant to be a customizable curriculum. So that's why we don't sell it. It's just here, and it's a tool that lays out K through 12, making sure that everything has been read that we think is important to be read, and rotating through the cycle. So it's meant to become Geneva's scope and sequence, is really what it is. So teachers can own it quite a bit in what they want to do.
I have a parent question now.
Yes.
So I have a student who's going to be a senior next year. So how different? Like how much do I need to prepare him? How different will
Good.
it be?
It's a good question. There's probably going to be a good bit more in-class writing, because at the end of each class you want to have a good conclusion that is kind of like a mini telos to the big telos that you're doing. And then the reading is rich. I think they're doing quite a bit of reading right now, though, aren't they?
They're doing plenty of reading.
Yeah, it'll be, now it's only 10, one of it is a deeper dive, so it's only 10 books per year.
Okay.
So it's a deeper dive in the books. But like Paradise Lost, we give 6 weeks for it. So we give a good bit of time to be able to really wrestle with it and have time with it. So it's not as rapid of reading as like Omnibus is. So just so everybody knows, I'm old, so I was one of the first ones teaching Omnibus when it came out, and was having the kids read all 500 pages a week of every book, everything, and I did it for 6 years for kids. Somehow they survived me, and they went on, and they're thriving adults. Praise the Lord, because I should have destroyed them, but that's it's more like deeper diving into the books.
So when you say more writing, can you
Mhm.
elaborate?
Shorter pieces, except for thesis type stuff, but shorter, more like succinct, like, can you prove this? Find it in the text and prove it in the text. The ekphrasis, like that paragraph. But that could take a student an hour to write, because they're refining it. But you're doing a lot of in class, like, let's read that out loud, and the student stands up and we're like, is that the right word? So for example, that picture with the green dress. One of the teachers last week that I was training, she said the dress was like green grass. And so I had a group about this size, and I said, "What does that fit? Does that help you? Like, if you were blind and you were picturing this picture, would the dress, that's accurate? It was a bright green like grass, but is that the fitting word?" So a lot of the class is going to be wrestling through that and practicing, and a lot of coaching in how to do the writing. So it's not like giant theses all the time or essays all the time. It's building up thesis skills and building up pro-gym skills. So, but the reading's going to be the crux of it, and then lots of deep discussion, and then a writing prompt based on those discussions.
Right, and one more question.
Yeah.
So the writing they do now, it's not really a part of a program. So as they go into the
Progymnosmatas.
Okay,
I abbreviate it pro-gyms. It's just
Okay,
easier for
great.
everybody.
So what adjustments might
Yeah.
they expect from that? Like they're going to learn it.
Good.
Sure, as they go.
I'm so glad you asked that. So the adjustment is going to be, bear with me. I'm going to give some background to this. They're going to fail at it a lot more. I don't mean they're going to fail the class. They're going to fail at it a lot more because that kind of writing takes a while to hone. It doesn't just come out.
This is probably exactly what my son needs, but I can anticipate some resistance.
Perfectionist kids struggle the most because they want the formula. What's the prescription so I can get an A on this? In fact, I've had parents that say, you know, my child's a straight A student. I'm like, they're going to struggle more than the B and C students. Because the straight A student is used to, this is the formula, I follow the formula, and I have it. And this is more like, it didn't make me feel the way the painting did. Right? It's a different way of doing it. It really is. But it teaches them, because the rest of their life, they're going to be pleasing a boss, pleasing a coach, like it's learning what it is. And one of the big things is, like, one of the things I always tell kids is, I'm your audience when I'm reading it, so love me. Know me well enough to, what am I looking for? And then when I'm having them present to the class, that's your audience, love them. What do they need to hear? And so it's a beautiful honing, but there's a lot more good failure aspects. And just to clarify that difference, good failure is not sinful, right? It's good failure is I tried really hard and I didn't succeed. It's all of us as adults have experienced it, but we've almost protected children from it. And progymnosmatas allow a lot of opportunities for good failure. But one of the things that we do a lot of training on that we recommend is really honing the soft grading, which is no grade in the grade book. So the first few ekphrases that they would be doing would be like, okay, let's refine, let's do this before it's a hard grade. Then it'd be a hard grade, and then we recommend a magnum opus. Like after they've practiced it multiple times, it's their best work so far, the ekphrases. And that's when they start to see their improvement, and then they actually write better because of it. So kids that are straight A's, progymnosmatas are hard on because it's not so formulaic as, Neuratio. Did you convince without an argument? That's really the rubric. And so it's a lot of conversations. It's a lot more about relationship. So yes, if you have straight A students, prepare them for good failure.
So maybe this is next.
Yeah.
Are you going to explain grades next, and what do grades are they looking like? And
Like A's, B's, C's, is that what you mean by grades? Like,
yeah, or even if you're saying, well, they're getting a soft grade in the classroom, or they're failing well, how does the teacher communicate that
yeah.
to me, where we can help them at home?
Yep.
Or you need to put more time and effort into this, or
It won't look
or
much
you're
different.
failing well.
I won't, yeah, right. It won't look much different than what I saw today, because you have teachers doing a great job with soft grading, being like, oh, nope, that's not right. Nope, that's not right. Yes, that's right. No, that's not right. And they're learning until everybody gets it. Well, and I were talking about it today, like where everybody's going up to the whiteboard and writing their answers, and you're kind of going, yes, so that's going to look the same. The difference is going to be actually a lot of comments. I mean, there's going to be a lot of feedback and comments, and the way Class Reach works, you can really put feedback next to it so the parents can open any grade and see the feedback. But we really encourage the teacher, this is a relational thing. If I'm grading Will's paper, I want to sit down with him and go like, hey, here's what you have. I think it was your son-in-law Luke that actually, he and I got into an argument over his grade one time, and he's like, this is what I meant to say. I go, wait, say that again, Luke. And he's like, this is what I meant to say. And I'm like, but did you say it? No. I think it was him, but I'm not sure. It's like, hey, great. Those are great moments. Like, it's like, okay, great, but that's not what you said. And the thing that's really important for parents is this is the long game. We desperately care for them to have, we don't want them to be penalized that they're at a classical Christian school to go to college. And that's why we're doing lots of soft grading. We want to get them up to where they're really good, but we also don't want to ever manufacture a grade. If it's not a straight A student, we don't want to give them A's. It used to be that everybody running big companies, they had done this study, I don't know who they is, but they did this study of some kind, that everybody who was running these big companies were C students. Has anybody ever heard that before? Yeah, and but it's not the case anymore. Why? We're not letting kids get C's. We're panicked about college scholarships and getting into colleges, and we've stopped letting kids get C's. And I think it's interesting. It used to be that a C student was a student that tried really hard, and it was a struggle. That's why they were better at running businesses. But it's different. We've almost taken that struggle away to say, well, they tried really hard. The other thing that we really recommend, and one of the reasons we love the Class Reach system for schools, is that there's a conduct grade or a character grade. And so we recommend every quarter that there's a conduct grade, because one of the things that's important as parents is to see, just because, and I had one of these, I had one of my students at Logos was a straight A student. I mean, he has a photographic memory, everything he did was great, but I also know he was my biggest stinker and biggest sinner, right? So his straight A's, I could look at the parent, as a parent, and go, ooh, yes, he's doing so well, but I wish I had had a character grade, because I know what it would have said. He's arrogant, he's a stinker, he would have been some of that stuff. So the character grade is going to say something like, and I think, Will, you went through all those categories on the grading scale, but it's like, like one of the categories is he self-sacrificing? It would be like always, sometimes, never. So the parent can go, my child's a straight A student, but they're a rotten sinner. Or the opposite would be good. This is kind of that good struggle. You look and you go, my child has all C's. But everything is, they're always loving, they're always kind, they're always, this is not a sin situation. This isn't a shirking responsibility. This is a student that's struggling and doing a good job, as good as they can. That should mean something. It should mean something. We've got to break this understanding of caring so deeply about, what they get for college. And again, we're going to know if they're going to be failing or something that's different. But don't be afraid of C's. Don't be afraid of your child getting C. It's the best thing ever for them sometimes.
The entering cohort, the lowest
Yes.
or youngest cohort, what is the skill set that
Yeah.
we expect them to have?
Yeah. The kind of the pre-readers, it's very much like kindergarten. Can they hold a pencil? Are they interested in books? Just very much. The first two levels really end up being a pretty traditional kindergarten and first grade, generally speaking. You've got pre-readers, early readers. They tend to be that. It's really once, quote, about second grade that you start to kind of, and it's also when the kids start to, you start to see some disparity of their level, right? Like you have one kid coming out of first grade who's reading proficiently and another one that's still working on phonics. And that's where you can really help them meet their cohort level. Yeah.
Is it easy for kids who are in public school or something, if they want to come in at 5th grade or 6th grade, is it easy for them?
It's never easy for the kids to come, but it's possible. Yes, it's very much.
Well, you didn't start in kindergarten or first grade, so you're not going to be able to make it.
No, we have schools all over that get started that fill up K through 12 year one with public school kids, and it's just meeting them where they're at, and it's usually not the kids that have the problem; it's the parents of straight A students. I'll usually tell if there's a head of school, if there's not a head of school, sometimes one of our team members will meet with the family and be like, if your child's a straight A student in the public school, this is going to be a big shock to them. So they're probably not always going to get A's. That's the only one that it ends up causing. Actually, the struggling students in the public school come in and go like, oh, I can actually discuss this. I'm actually starting to learn it. And so it's actually kind of beautiful. So it's just those straight A, the only kids I've ever seen have an issue are straight A students in the public school that are just not used to any kind of feedback that's negative. But yeah, it's doable. It's harder, obviously, because part of it is we're designing a program, and Geneva's already got this. It's got this culture, and it's got this backwards, we want to do this backwards planning leading to 12th grade, and so we're designing a program that's meant to be here from, quote, kindergarten through 12th grade, be here that whole time. It's a full program, it's a Paideia. So it's always going to be, we don't want to design a program around people coming and going. We want to design it around that and then help them when they come in. You know, yeah.
Okay, 2 questions maybe. So how do I talk to like a younger child who's very excited about being in a certain grade next year, and now they're not going to be in a grade? Like, can I still just tell them they're in a grade?
Yes, they can.
Like,
You can. I think the way I usually recommend it to parents is the kids still know what grade they're in, generally speaking. Like the 9th graders are going to know their 9th graders. The 12th graders are going to know their 12th graders. They're just going to. It's our nomenclature of our society. They're going to know it. I think what we could say is though that's kind of what your age and stage is, but you're going to be in a level that's going to be perfect for you for reading. And it's not going to slow you down. It's just going to. So I think they can still refer to themselves as grades.
As like as a grade. I guess
Yeah.
I just get confused about, like, my kids are young, so I don't really care that much since I don't have somebody who's about to like
Yes.
try and graduate.
Yes.
But I'm like, I don't know, like, if they just make it here 12 years, but they're still like at like the 8th grade level and this level, like, do we just graduate them like?
Yeah. No, it's a good. The average student is still gonna. It's actually 13 years K to 12, right? So they're actually gonna. The average student's gonna be here 13 years. The idea that's different is that you're never gonna have 13 cohorts.
Okay.
That's the unique thing. That's what changes it. You might have 7, you might have 8, you might have 10, depending on the number of enrollment. We have one school that has 20 cohorts. They don't have 20 grades. They have 20 cohorts. They're incremental. They actually are big enough that they have a kind of what would be a traditional kindergarten. Then they almost have a step up for the kids that come in already reading, but are 5. And then they have like between first and second, what would be our understanding. They have one that's between that, almost like a 1B. That's for those more advanced first graders. And then they have that staggered. So they have 20 different incremental levels, and the kids are still graduating in 13 years.
Okay, so how do you even take a yearbook picture?
You take a cohort picture.
Like
Cohort picture. This is my group. This is my class. Yeah.
I mean, is it going to be the 3rd grade teacher is Mrs. Cross? Or that's probably where you'll start out, but maybe certain kids will split off into, but technically.
You still have
is she
one
the
teacher.
Or am I going to have 7 teachers
Oh, no.
for each grade now? Which is going to.
No. The most you would probably have is 2. Like, so if you have a student whose math skill is very different than their reading skill, you might have them be in math and science that's different than their humanities. So they might have 2 teachers. Does that make sense? They're not moving 5 times during the day. Because it's.
Yeah, so because that's kind of important for a younger child. Like, I mean, middle school.
Yeah, you know what's amazing? And you guys have this culture here. I mean, we do it all the time at these schools. Again, it's not every 50 minutes changing things. They're in their quadrivium block, their math and science basically for 2 hours. And then they would go to their humanities. So it's one change. It's not like changing. And those are very rare. I mean, most kids are going to line up, but the ones that don't, oftentimes it's boys whose reading is behind their math. And that way they don't have to be held back in any way. So it sounds like it's like kids, it's like high school. It's not like every 50 minutes the bell rings and they go to a different class. It's very organic, and it's very, what I've really loved about it is all the kids get to know each other really well, and it's not such a class division. The rest of life is not like this. Right? I'm so glad that I cannot only hang out with people in their late 50s. I'm glad I can hang out with other people. It's actually, it would be horrible. We were relegated to only my age. It would be very boring, So there's a beauty to the so they're not moving tons.
But their basic teacher would be like.
Their humanities teacher. Their humanities teacher is going to be essentially like their homeroom teacher, their main teacher.
Like their 3rd grade.
Mm-hmm. It'll just be a cohort. It's really not going to feel as differently as what it seems. It sounds so foreign, but it's really not that. The only harder thing is when we do, at the end of the year, we look at like where they should be placed. But most of the kids are going to fit pretty much. I mean, the average child, the reason age grade segregation happened is kids kind of follow an incremental path. But this is just going to allow for individually assessing students.
But am I going to know, like, say, saying, well, the third grade teacher is this. If they're in this level, then it will be that teacher
Yep.
for that. So this year, your teachers could be, maybe these teachers, but my third grader, even though they're reading high, she's not going to go into sixth grade, for example.
Right.
Oh, she'll be with the sixth grade readers.
No, we wouldn't do it like that big of. We wouldn't do a big. We wouldn't do a big gap like that. So we wouldn't have like somebody that's 8 in with 12-year-olds. That's too big of a gap. The reading content's different. But you could easily have like 8, 9, and 10-year-olds together. I'm just throwing that out there. Or you could have 7, 8, 9-year-olds together pending. It's still everybody always has tons of questions about this, and just because we do it all the time, I get to watch it. In the end, the kids, it doesn't feel that, it's not as foreign as what it sounds. It just allows Geneva, I call it the pregnancy pant model. It allows Geneva to expand or shrink based on the number of students without having to sit there and go, now we're combining another set of grades, now we're combining another set of grades. So it's in more rural America, it's a model that really helps because you could end up with 200 kids and have 20 cohorts. Or if something happens, a big kerfuffle happens and you drop down to 50 students, you have 5 cohorts. It allows a kind of a pregnancy pant, that's why I call it the pregnancy pant model. Oh, only if you've had lots of babies, you get that. So, yes.
What happens if someone shows up and breezes through all 10 years and all 10
That's a good question. We had a student did that in 7th grade. He was taking chemistry. He was a genius. And we met with his parents, and they were ready. They really wanted him to graduate early, and he was done. He was an anomaly. Yeah, but yeah, that can happen. I mean, there's a chance of that, and might be one child that needs an extra year, and we've had parents say, he needs another year. He needs it. It's always been a boy. He needs it. So, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I have a 10th grader.
Yeah.
So in that kind of, I don't know where my student would end up, but if they end up kind of in that most advanced cohort for a number of years, how do we keep it from feeling repetitive to them, just doing the same exercises again and again with different material? Because I know you said that they're on a cycle.
Right. Ancient, medieval, modern, postmodern, yeah.
So how do we keep that fresh for them? I mean, I know we're going through different books and things like that, but it's this, if it's the same kind of.
Well, it's going to be different poetry. It's going to be different memory work. It's going to be different writing exercises. And what's great about the progymnosmata is they're so predicated based on what you are reading that it feels totally different. But it's no different than and they're getting better each year, so you're able to give more advanced ones, and you can even give different rubrics. Like even at Logos, when I taught at Logos, I did different rubrics. I had like 3 different rubrics I'd do for my kind of students that maybe needed to be encouraged a different way. I would do one rubric, then I'd do a rubric for this group and a rubric for this group. And if they have a problem, like, why are we getting different rubrics? Because you learn differently.
And my last question.
Yeah.
How does language fit into that?
Latin or any of the Greek or the Hebrew. That's what we're still working that out a little bit, but there's a block for language, and the idea would be that what we want is actually language offered at the same time, so students can move to their level of language too.
So we do have 3rd grade starts Latin.
Yes.
Love it.
Yes, we've been talking about that. There's still, I mean, that'll be, and again, this is your guys' program, so we've been talking a lot about different things in the schedule and fitting things in the schedule. Music's a big part of what you guys do, which is beautiful. Got to hear that today. I mean, it's still Geneva and flavor and all that stuff. And it's just making a schedule that actually is more. First of all, it's a cost affordable schedule that makes it to where it fits kind of. The teacher needs, and also having teachers be able to teach, not have to teach so many subjects, but be able to kind of subject expertise at the upper levels is one big thing. And then another thing is, again, that ability to just kind of keep the schedule somewhat simple is just going to help. It just helps with budgets is a big part of it. Would we like to offer every class possible and everything? Absolutely. Just gets almost impossible. We went into a school in California, 50-year-old school, that was running at a $570,000 deficit a year. And just a schedule change took them down to a $100,000 deficit a year. Just a schedule change. So schedules keeping those block schedules really is, I think it's just a better way, the way we learn, because it's more integrated, but it's also just it's a fantastic longevity schedule, is what it is. Any other questions?
I feel like I'm just going to tell my kids school's going to be like playground recess time all the time. They always see kids of different ages at recess. So
Yeah.
it's going to be like, you're just going to be with more all your friends.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's how it's going to be.
Yeah, we have one school named all their classes, like they did Augustine, Tolkien. They didn't even call them like levels. They just named, the classrooms just had a title on them. And it was kind of fun. Yeah. And again, with all of this, guys, as I'm saying this, I'm speaking just because I know the curriculum well, but this is going to be all stuff that's wrestled through. This is your school. This is what we're doing. This is just something that we have found by the grace of God that works really well in schools that are under 300 kids. Because it's hard to maintain good longevity in the smaller schools. And if the Lord allows you to get to 300 kids and you're going to maintain that, then that might be a time to change. But this is just a great way to kind of meet where you're at, be able to grow to 200 easily, and Lord willing, provide that really consistent thing. So I always say it's just a volume turn up. It feels like it's this. It's not. It's a volume turn up. It's turning up the volume on what classical Christian education is, equipping the teachers, and just having kind of a 12th grade backwards planning is what it is. So it won't feel as foreign as what it's sounding. It's more of just a robust explanation. Yeah.
So the curriculum is available for the parents to
Yeah.
see?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It's we'll send it out, and then the school will have its own copy that you can give access to parents if you like. You can read the triv sheets. You can. We have a couple of 2-day schools that use it because they're more of a university model type, where the parents are co-teaching, and they love it because they can get into it. It's a spreadsheet. It's not like a book. It's a spreadsheet with all the different things for each unit, and then the trivium sheets, and we don't mind at all. The only thing that Concordis proper asks for is just that you don't share it with other schools, because it's kind of part of our intellectual property rights. So we give it to all of our schools for free, but we don't give it to all schools for free. So, yeah.
One, two-part comment and then question. Number one, you said music already, but music, languages, Bible is a big, huge piece you've seen today. It's core, and we don't want to give up on that. And we have a lot of tenured teachers that can enhance the curriculum pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Just given the experience.
Right.
I guess you would say the flexibility is there in the curriculum for them to move freely about the cabin.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
In fact, most people will say this curriculum is far more, to your concern, like it's kind of like pick your telos, there's 50 you could choose. Okay. So it's still individualizing. What it does, though, is it gives, don't forget these geography skills, don't forget these skills, don't forget these skills, while you're choosing which telos you're aiming at. So what it does is, because it's been backwards planned from like what skills need to build upon the other, it's got the skills laid out throughout the years, and then but each teacher is going to pick something different. What I would pick for Romans 13 might be completely different than somebody else picks, and so that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, so it's got the landmarks in there.
It's got the landmarks. That's a good benchmarks. Landmarks is a great way to say it.
The second part is, can you say anything about the compound interest for new teachers, or just teachers in general, approaching this curriculum, teaching it year over year in a cohort? So like that first year, like you said, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's even with some customization going on in the teaching of the curriculum, doesn't it start to compound in efficiency of teaching, at least year over year?
Just getting easier, you mean, or
I mean, they're teaching the same stuff. Well, not the same stuff. It's on 3 years.
They're 4-year cycle. So it is harder because you're reading different books each year. Mm-hmm. So it is harder. What it does is it makes better teachers. Right. And because you're studying all the eras of time. So like I did all 6 levels of omnibus, and I'm so glad I did. I know a whole lot more about about education and about the world, than I did. And so what's interesting, to kind of use your question, what I've noticed, like year 3 teachers are like, oh, I'm referencing back to Egypt, and I'm referencing back, and that teacher would never have known that that was there. So it's a little harder on the teachers, but the skills, if they teach at the same cohort each year, the skills stay the same. So now they're just incorporating different, different teleses in and stuff. So I think it's a blast to lesson plan. I get into schools all the time where I'll show up at a school and like a teacher's sick that day and they have nobody to sub, so I end up subbing instead of evaluating teachers or something. And I've had to use the template very quickly to put together a lesson plan or something. And it's once you get in the habit, good experienced teachers are not going to have a problem with it. It's just a little different way of thinking about it. So yeah, and the books, it's only 10 books a year, so it's not reading what Omnibus requires, which is lots of books. I mean, some of them are big books, but we usually recommend that the teachers over the summer get Unit 1 completely ready, not the whole year ready, but Unit 1. And it's also mapped out for the year already. You already know, because your weeks are going to be mapped out. You're going to know what week 1 you're doing, what week 2 you're doing. You can parse out your pages. So it's actually, a lot of it's done for you based on the calendar that Geneva has. Then we just customize the curriculum to fit your calendar. And then the teachers already know what they're doing week 1, what they're doing week 2, what they're doing week 3, and then they're really just doing their unit telos planning. So, yes, sir.
So one of the things that we purposely, philosophically did with this school to make it unique from typical classical school was to give Bible an emphasis, that it would have, that we're training up Christians, so I know you've addressed that. We're not classicists in that sense or humanistic, right. But so it was purposefully an emphasis that got its own time, that we dealt very deeply in, and it wasn't just integrated.
Right.
Like it was something that.
Right.
Would there be a possibility within that humanities time that we could still have a Bible deep
most
dive?
of the schools take the first 15, 20, 30 minutes to do Bible alone. And some of the schools that go till 3 do have a set 45 minutes for Bible. With going till 1, we're definitely fitting a lot more in, but I think I usually recommend the first part of every humanities class is focused on God's Word. Reading God's Word, looking at it, and then what's amazing is as you do that, and that's why we have it as the first part of the lesson plan. You read God's Word, and so they'll have read through for the 4-year cycle, depending on their age, they'll have read through most, not all of the Old Testament, most of the Old Testament, all of the New Testament, Psalms and Proverbs, and some apologetics, kind of doctrine issues is what we've laid out, but we can also customize that. So that's something we haven't even done yet, is looked at that, but it's very imperative. And so some schools do, it's hard in the shorter day to have a block of time, but I recommend putting it at the beginning and making it a priority. It should be the priority. Yeah.
So you're saying that in the 4 course cycle, you will cover all of that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got, and we'll go over kind of what, we might customize it to something you guys are already doing. We can customize any of that.
So, on average, maybe 3 times through the Bible, by the time I graduate?
Yeah, we don't have Song of Solomon in there.
Okay.
And that's intentional.
Now, why wouldn't you do that?
It's interesting. We went back and forth on that, but and you guys could if you wanted to. We just read that even the Jews didn't let their kids read Song of Solomon when they were younger, which was interesting. So we found that out from a rabbi. So we thought, maybe we'll not do that one till later.
That's why they're still Jews.
And again, a lot of this is customizable because it becomes your curriculum, and then we just kind of we customize it to what you guys want it to be. And so if you go, we want Paradise Lost in 5 weeks, not 6 weeks. It's all. That's why we didn't print it. It's all like we can make it it becomes your scope and sequence.
Is this teacher question.
Yeah.
Is this something we actually do on some kind of portal?
So yeah, you'll have a spreadsheet with it, and then we do like 5 different lesson plan templates to kind of give you examples of things, and then you can do whatever you would like with it. And then we have, we're actually starting to get all of our videos. We're going to do some video training with it too. It just hasn't, we've got video training on how to use lesson plans, but we're actually going to have like, you're studying Egypt, here's what to think about, here's some things, we're starting to get that.
So if we were to ask when we might get those things, about when?
Oh, anytime.
Okay.
I mean, but we just need to make sure that we've got it laid out with your calendar and how you like it. And then, yeah, you can get it very, very soon.
Okay.
So you can look at it. Yeah. It's nothing fancy. It's a spreadsheet. It's everything that's needed for the unit. And
But is it Excel? Because
it's a Google Sheet. But it's all clickable. So we'll help you if you get stuck. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I get one more question. Yes, hi.
Yes, hi. I was wondering, so you're providing the 10 books that they each need to read each year. You provide what you're going to tell them what they. So then is that the case with if we are thinking about our Bible curriculum that we've been using, is that being chunked and now, or is that what you're saying is able to be customized?
You could absolutely customize it. We have God's literally the Bible laid out in reading along the plan is what we have. If there's something else, that's not something, we can talk about that. If we have some schools that have used Memorial Press's Christian Studies, and that's what's beautiful about this is it becomes your spreadsheet. And then you can put in if you had chapters you wanted to read from that. We recommend a couple of apologetics books. We love Peter Lightheart's Old Testament study, so we have it laid out there as a resource for teachers. So we've just kind of brought some different things in, and so that can be customized easily. So this is definitely not dictate curriculum. It's more wrestle through it, create it, make it Geneva's, and that's the reason we did it the way we did it, is because we wanted it to be customizable for schools, but give them a good scope and sequence K through 12. That's what we did. Yeah.
All right, so on piggybacking off of that, so if we were to choose something, you would still guide us in the approach and the kinds of questions to ask and to draw.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we have some schools that don't use our curriculum at all that we advise. Another reason we don't sell it is we don't want anybody to feel like they have to. We're not trying to do a sales pitch to get you to use it. We're just trying to say here's something that can help you really get going with a good K through 12.
But I'm interested, it's like the approach method.
Yes,
that's what you
we help a lot
with
with the approach. Yes, we have some teachers that newer teachers will sometimes send us and the head of school the lesson plans, and we'll work with the head of school on coaching through gosh, it looks like it's missing this. I got a brand new teacher that just got hired for a school today. I got a lesson plan from her, and the head of school sent it to me and said, I feel like something's missing. And I'm like, oh, yep, she's kind of missing questions, and I just put a few questions in there, and she's got that now. So we do a lot of that, and we'll help co-evaluate. So we always recommend teachers record themselves, send it to us, and we'll give feedback. We can customize some training for teachers, anything that's helpful. So it's, I liked being evaluated a lot as a teacher. I felt like I grew a lot more once I was evaluated.
So about how often you get to turn this in?
Oh, lesson plans?
No, of the videos to be evaluated.
So everybody's gonna panic a little bit. I like teachers to be evaluated 8 times in a year.
Okay.
And the reason is just to, and it doesn't mean it's this formal big thing. It's sort of, how are things going? What do we need? Well, let's look at the lesson plan. How are things going? It's a coaching. To me, I feel like administration should be doing with the teachers what we want the teachers doing with the students.
Yes, and I would like that.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
So.
I can send them. I have one teacher that sends me a weekly thing and asks me to review her.
I won't do that to you. I will be knocking on your door.
Yeah, no, we're happy to. We love it. We get to watch such blessed teachers. It's amazing. Sometimes we got a teacher the other day. I'm like, this is stellar, and we sent ACC out to film her. I'm like, this is amazing. They sent a crew out to film. I'm like, get that filmed. That's amazing. We need to send that one around. So we do that too. So sometimes there's bonus check for it because they pay people when we find that teacher that's like, they got it. They really got it.
Did you say sometimes y'all use Memorial Press?
We don't.
Okay.
We have some schools that'll use Memorial Press as a Bible.
Okay. Is that Highlands Latin School in Kentucky? Is that where Memorial
I
Press
think
is?
Highlands Latin does. I think that school does use Memorial Press. Memorial Press is it's a publishing company for curriculum.
Okay.
Yeah, and they have some Memorial Press schools. Yeah, they have some good stuff. Yeah, because some of the schools really like some of their materials. Yeah.
But y'all are separate from them.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not a publishing house. We're not.
I'm on their mailing list. They have
Oh, yeah.
they have a good.
Yeah,
They have pretty stuff.
they do have pretty stuff. Yeah, they do.
Well, this is my son's question.
Yes.
I wasn't able to be here to ask. His concern is that when they go to 1 o'clock, and maybe this is a headmaster question, but then is it just going to be all learning and you don't get any break to interact with the students freely? Not that, I mean, the interaction that's going on with the classroom discussion is great, but he's just like, it's fun when we can kind of be on our own and we start, you know, having a debate about something we're talking about in class.
Yeah.
But then he's like, well then, what, is there going to be any of that time, or you're just gonna have to wait till 1 o'clock? And that's
there's
your
a
free
lunch
time?
break. We have a lunch. Don't we have a break? We have yeah.
Yeah, there will be a break in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think I would be shocked with the way the classrooms, like the discussions are going. I've never had kids feel like they weren't getting time with each other. You know.
Okay.
So, but I think that's something you guys can talk through. It's neat that the kids want to spend time with each other. It's good. Yeah. I love for families to get involved with like doing study nights with the kids, where like bring 7 or 8 kids over and have them all study at your house together, and you can do a lot of that type of thing as well. We always did that at Logos. Our house was always filled with other kids, and that was always kind of fun. You could be studying together. Well, I keep getting a time thing, guys, so I don't know if you want to dismiss everybody, or I'm so sorry, guys. I've been talking for like 6 days straight, so at events, and my throat, I think, is finally giving out. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Heather. Let me,